I am so excited to share our conversation with Sabrina Martucci Johnson, the founder and CEO of Daré Biosciences, which she referred to as a women's health roll-up. And what was so fascinating, and I always love when I'm able to get so excited about the business side and you can dig into the science, is how focused and clear she is in her vision of what the company could be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm literally jumping out of my seat with all of the preclinical and clinical studies that she is sharing and that are on the website for review that really are addressing the unmet needs that have not been solved. And with so much discussion about so many studies being done in men and then sort of being applied to women, this is someone who is actually involving women in the studies for women's problems. So I think this is super interesting.
And just want to highlight, she made a statement which I had never heard before, which was something akin to the FDA was great and fabulous and easy to work with. And that is really emblematic of how Sabrina approaches business with this, taking very complex ideas and simplifying them. The other thing she does that I love is really a design thinking approach. You'll hear her over and over again talk about the consumer insight. What is the problem she's solving from the voice of the person who is suffering from that problem?
But she's also checking out the voices of the multiple clinicians out there who are frustrated with what's unavailable. So she's really melding this all together. Let's talk to her. Welcome to the Business of the V. Hello, friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Alyssa Dweck.
And I'm Rachel Braun Scherl. Each week, we bring you the most fascinating investors, inventors, entrepreneurs, academics, and healthcare practitioners who are making things happen in women's sexual and reproductive health.
If you are a woman, know a woman, have a business, or care about your V health and wellness, fasten your seatbelts and listen in to another informative and inspiring episode.
We are so excited today to have Sabrina Martucci Johnson, who's the founder and CEO of Daré Biosciences. And if you've ever listened to us before, you know we always are fascinated to know about the journey, how someone got here. And Sabrina, yours is particularly interesting, obviously a strong interest in science and biotech, but in 2015, you had the forethought to create Daré. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what was the catalyst for you to really be ahead of your time in creating Daré and the focus that it has.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And excited to talk about it. So I have spent my entire career in the drug development industry, pharmaceutical industry, in a variety of roles, research, sales, marketing, finance, operations, and working in a variety of therapeutic areas throughout my career. And I had an opportunity in, this is going to sound so long ago, but in the 2000s, in the early 2000s, to work on back-to-back two different indications that were predominantly women, but not conditions we would think of women's diseases per se. One was rheumatoid arthritis, which is predominantly women. And then after that, I worked on a product for fibromyalgia, which is also predominantly women. And that really got me thinking. Those were the first two indications that I had worked on in terms of drug development that had such a women-centric sort of focus in terms of the disproportional effect that it had on women. And it really just got me thinking big picture about women's health. And I got very excited about the prospect of maybe pivoting my career and really focusing on drug development in women's health. And so I started looking. I was at the time a chief financial officer and chief operating officer at a publicly traded company. And I started looking for who else is working in women's health, right? What are the opportunities in women's health? And I was incredibly disappointed to see that there was really this lack of commitment to develop products in women's health.
And the other piece was there had been companies that had been committed, and because products went off patent or, divestiture,
exactly,
there really were very few companies you could look to and say, those are the women's health companies.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And but what I saw though were some really promising aspects about the field of women's health, right? I did see that, first of all, while there's a lot of biology we still need to try to understand, there were also a lot of therapeutic areas where we did know, right, what we need to do. It was just a matter of advancing the products that could actually do that. So I thought that was promising for women. It was also promising to see, and this is still the case, that there are pharmaceutical companies, global pharmaceutical companies, that maybe they're not investing internally in development in women's health, but they are still very committed to distribute products for women and ensure that there's that broad access and distribution channel. So that was very promising. So we really did. So then it took me a few years to make it all happen, but in 2015, so it was about 2010 or so where I started obsessing about it. And in 2015, I started Daré with really the sole focus on transforming women's health by advancing products through development. So our whole business model has been figure out what the problems are, right? By talking with patients, with clinicians, right? Healthcare providers, understand where are the unmet needs, work with them to try to put together a product profile, right? If we were going to solve that for you, what would that product solution look like? And then we really go look for innovation that has already happened, right? Often at small companies or academic institutions where they've built the technology already, and then we play the role in making sure it moves through development, getting it through the FDA. And then to date, we've partnered for commercialization, so that we don't have to do that ourselves. We've gone to those companies that already have that capacity and capability, and we think that's the best way to get those products as broadly as we can, right, to women as quickly as possible.
You know what I am so amazed about is the breadth of women's health issues that you're addressing. So I don't know if you have a team of like 1 million people dealing with all of this. But, just to cover a few, and please add to this list if I'm missing anything, but we've got contraception. And, I definitely want to delve into the fact that this is male and female, which, is really sparking my interest. But we have menopause, we have sexual health and arousal, we have, cramps, dysmenorrhea, which is really very much of an unmet need, because right now all we have are heating pads, birth control pills, maybe, and analgesia. Of course, vaginal dryness, which is a huge issue, whether it's menopausal or not. How did you decide to go forward with these particular categories? And, is it like one team works on everything, or do you have separate teams for each category?
Oh, I love the question. So actually, I'll start first with the team, and then I'll talk about, right, how we selected. So we're actually small in terms of literally like employees of Daré. We are 25 people, right? So we are a small organization, but this is the beauty of having a deep vertical, right? All we do is women's health. And yes, to your point, it's broadly women's health, right? But it's all women's health, and most of our products, and we do have the male contraception we're working on as well, but right, it's predominantly women's health, and many of the products are delivered through a route of vaginal drug delivery, right? So, so what that means is we have this deep vertical, and yes, everyone on the team works on everything, right? And what that creates is efficiencies, right? You start to understand the nuances of clinical trials in women. You even start to understand the animal models, right? What are the right animal models for these products for women? What are the kind of things you need to think about, the intentionality you need to have in clinical studies if you're going to do studies in specifically women. And then importantly, the Food and Drug Administration, right? Because everything we're working on is related to women, we're typically working with the same people at the FDA, the same division at the FDA. And that ensures that our team, which is made up of, really kind of high-level experts in each of the different categories you need to develop products of this nature, they start to have that really deep, right, understanding of the category of women's health, big picture. And that does allow us to be efficient, right? And that does therefore allow us to think broadly and work broadly. And so how do we choose all these areas? It really goes back to that kind of initial vision, right, of Daré, of what are the problems, but importantly, what are the problems where we can deliver a solution in a relatively quick time frame, right, for women. Let's make something happen, right, for women relatively quickly in the whole like scheme of drug development where things can take so long. Where can we be impactful very quickly? And so that's really also how we selected the areas to work. So I'll use contraception and sexual arousal as two examples of that. So in the contraceptive space, there are a lot of unmet needs. I mean, the fact that 45% of pregnancies are unintended tells you we're not delivering, right, all the solutions for someone who wants to
And
prevent.
people are stunned. We quote that all the time, and people literally say, how can that be? And I think some of the challenge is that it doesn't mean those pregnancies don't result in live births. But that if you ask the people, was this, the optimal time? The answer is no.
Right. No, I wasn't trying to get pregnant, right? And so we really tried to like understand that, and what we found, and that there were things that people wanted, right? The things that people would say, well, I don't want to take hormones, but I want something convenient, right? I'm not going to use a condom. I want something I can control, and I would love it if it could actually be a little more effective, right, than the non-hormonal on-demand options today. Or we would hear, I love getting an injection and having something discreet like that, but you know what? I hate having to go in as frequently as I do, and I don't like that it's so unpredictable when I'm going to return to fertility. Or I love the concept of an implant, right? Something that can be implanted in my arm, but I don't know when I'm going to be wanting to get pregnant. And so the thought of having to go in, get it implanted and taken out again, and maybe put back in again is inconvenient for me. So we would take all of these sort of, little gems that we would hear, and then that would start our journey of like, okay, can we solve that? And sometimes there would be something that would come up that we did not think was solvable right away, right? And we're not targeting that, right? We're really trying to make a difference relatively quickly by selecting indications and product candidates where there is proof of concept, where the science is well understood, and someone has already shown, right, that it should work. And then let's try to move that forward as fast as we can. Arousal disorder is another example in kind of a different way, which is, we kind of look and, oh my gosh, there's so many products on the market for men for erectile dysfunction. And you sort of scratch your head and say, well, why isn't there something for women? And when we dig into the mechanism, not of desire disorder, right? Not for lack of interest, but for the genital sensations of arousal, it's the same mechanism. It's blood flow, right? So that was an example of what we looked at. Okay, well, why is there not Viagra for women? And lo and behold, Pfizer had studied it in women years ago. And lo and behold, it did work in this specific population, but the side effect profile of the oral dosing at the dose that was needed to get that kind of response in women just wasn't tenable, right?
And it also wasn't for lack of effort. At one point, there were dozens of active pharmaceutical programs focused on the Viagra for women.
Not only that, the timing now is so much more apropos with people actually speaking about this subject matter. So, right place, right time.
That's
so
exactly
you've done
right.
a couple things that are really interesting, many things that are really interesting. You've partnered early and with large companies. It sounds a little, when you present it this way, for people listening, it sounds easy. We know it's not easy. And also you're a public company, so you chose a different financing strategy. Can you share either or both? We want to hear about both. First, I guess the financing piece, because that is different than a lot of companies who are seeking private capital, institutional capital, investment from strategic partners. So how did that structure and that funding strategy come about?
Yeah, so I mentioned up front that part of my background is I spent several years as a chief financial officer, and 10 of those years as a chief financial officer of a publicly traded company. So, in that capacity, you obviously get a lot of insight, right, into how money can be raised from a public company perspective. And it's very different from how money is raised in a private company perspective. So obviously, when we started Daré, we started as a private company, right? Just like any company, Delaware C Corp started the company. But as we looked at what our model was, we really wanted to create what we are today, which is very much kind of think of it as a roll-up in women's health, right? We talked up front, we are working broadly. We have multiple programs in the portfolio at various stages of development. That's not really the venture capital model, right? A venture capital private company model often is, one asset or maybe one technology, right? But not this sort of broad roll-up. And our view was, this is actually more of a public company, right? We're going to have multiple products, multiple nice kind of milestone events every year, right? Which is what you really need as a publicly traded company. And also the science is not so confusing, right? That the average person can't understand it, right? We're also talking about very, very straightforward science. And so for all of those reasons, we felt that being publicly traded would be a better way to ensure that we could build the company the way we wanted to, deliver what we wanted to for women, and obviously make sense for all the stakeholders, which would include the investors. But having said all that, that all sounds fantastic. But then the practicality of it is you can't just like start a company and like go public, and do an initial public offering. And we really wanted, though, to move quickly and catalyze it quickly. So fortunately, with my public company background, and one of my co-founders was a former investment banker, we knew that there were often opportunities to merge into an already publicly traded company that maybe had some challenges, right? So we ultimately merged into a publicly traded company that had been in the cancer space and that had, raised money and had done great work in the cancer space, but unfortunately their programs did not work out and they needed to strategically find another solution for their investors. And we were a great fit for that. So that's the why on going public, and it's been great. For us, I don't recommend that for everyone. I have a public company background, so but for some people, being public can be very overwhelming because you do have quarterly reporting obligations, and there's a lot of oversight. But for us, we really felt that was the right model. And then to the question on partnerships, that was always part of our vision. What can be very challenging for a small biotechnology company that really has a development focus, what can be very challenging is then trying to stand up a commercial organization, right? And doing something that those are two very different activities and business models. And it's very difficult to also make the financials work if you have one product that you're commercializing at any one time. It's very expensive. And so we knew that part of our model would always be to have the optionality. Someday we might want to commercialize, and we have several of these products on market, and that might then make sense for us. But we wanted to make sure that we had the option to do that so that women, when we got something approved, could have access to it and as broadly as possible quickly, and not be kind of nickeling and diming our, a commercial launch. And what did that mean? That mean that we also had to be very disciplined in picking what comes into our portfolio. Going back to that initial question, how do you choose?
Yeah.
Right? We had to make we were choosing products that would have very broad interest and appeal so that a global pharmaceutical company could take it on.
So here's today's hot flash. One of the biggest burdens in the gynecology office is vaginitis, inflammation and infection in the vagina, specifically with something called bacterial vaginosis. Roughly 5 to 10 million office visits per year are attributed to vaginitis. This brings to mind your first, I guess, and only FDA approved product that came out a little bit ago in 2021, which is for one of the most frustrating and also most common and burdensome issues, which is vaginitis, or BV in this particular case, bacterial vaginosis, which we can go into a little bit. tell us about the approval process for this. And did you consider this to be like a better mousetrap for what was already available? What was the prompt to make this product?
That's such a great way of framing it. So first of all of your comments, that is what, when we would talk to healthcare providers and women, this is what came up first, almost every time, right? Help, 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 help. This is the bane of my existence. I don't have good solutions for her. It's so frustrating, for these women to have it's recurrent. It has, odor and discharge that are very embarrassing and disruptive, and has downstream health consequences if we don't manage it well in terms of fertility. And so we would hear it all the time. So when we dug into this particular condition, so obviously it was high on our list because it was so resonant. When we dug into, well, what's going on, right? What are the options today? And what are we trying to do therapeutically, right? What you see is that, antibiotics have been the approach, right? And down the road, it would be wonderful to come up with solutions that, are kind of the next generation of reconstituting that vaginal microbiome and doing, but the first step we looked at, okay, it's antibiotics. And when we look at those antibiotics, and like looking at clindamycin, a specific one in particular, and if you look at the activity in vitro, right, not in the human, but in vitro that it has on these bacteria, it has very fantastic activity across the culprits in bacterial vaginosis, right? That you're trying to get rid of. And so we could not understand why the cure rates were not as high as one would expect them to be for that antibiotic.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'd like to just add in that BV, which is like an imbalance of the normal bacteria that live in the vagina, and when the not so good bacteria overgrow, we get symptoms, discharge, odor, etc., and the downstream health consequences. The issue is the treatment is actually not that bad. It's the recurrence rate that is so overwhelming. Yes. So I wondered if your product was addressing that.
Yeah, no, great question. And so what we looked at is how can we make clindamycin stay, right, in the vaginal environment, and so that really directed us to a gel technology to deliver it that had been actually originally developed for in the veterinary space, like to keep stuff in dogs' ears or mouth. And the vagina is similar, right? Stuff can leak out, and so this is a thermosetting gel, so it actually gets more viscous and adherent as it warms to body temperature. So very different. And then to your point, in studying the product, we had a few goals. One, we obviously wanted to achieve a higher cure rate than had been achieved before, which we felt should be possible by actually keeping the clindamycin in the vaginal environment, right, and not letting it leak out. And we did want vaginal administration. I should have said that up front, just because this is, to your point, very recurrent. And let's lower the burden of systemic antibiotics for these women. So we wanted vaginal. We wanted to keep it there so that the clindamycin could work. And then to your point, we wanted to make sure that we studied the product in women that had recurrent disease, 3 or more episodes in a year, because those are the women that are predominantly in the healthcare system and that are so bothered, right, by the condition. We ran our clinical trial. So going back to the FDA discussions, FDA was fantastic on this program, also recognizing the unmet need. And
which is a sentence you don't hear that much. The FDA
I know. I want to say
fantastic.
it loud because they were really fantastic about, I really mean it sincerely. They recognized the unmet need. We told them that we wanted to get something that had labeling so clinicians could feel comfortable using it in women who are trying to get pregnant or were pregnant, because that was a real void that we heard from clinicians. And they were very excited that we wanted to look at it in that regard. So they were, really fantastic to work with. So we really were able to move very quickly with this program. But then lo and behold, we're ready to start our phase 3 trial. And that was March of 2020. COVID shut down. So we paused because we were very worried. Are we going to be able to get the patients we want? We wanted the demographic and ethnic breakdown that best reflected this patient population. And importantly, to your point, we wanted a highly recurrent patient population to come in so we could show, right, that it works in this population. So we paused for 3 months and talked to all the sites, and the sites that we had, already enrolled for the study to participate with us all said, these women are coming in, shut down or not, they are showing up.
Yes, I would have
So-
to agree with that on an anecdotal basis. That was one issue that didn't shut down. If it's okay, I really just want to switch subjects because
Yeah.
I'm mesmerized by so many of your products, and I'm curious what your thoughts are from a hormonal standpoint. First of all, I love that your products are delivered vaginally.
Thank
You
you.
know, this is an amazing environment to deliver medication or supplement or whatnot because of the beautifully rich blood supply in the vagina.
Yes,
But
exactly.
this is something that kind of confuses me, and I'd love your perspective. On the one hand, you're developing a ring with hormone replacement therapy level estrogen, progesterone for the
Yep.
menopausal population.
Yep.
And we've seen a big swing now in the hormone usage where the previous information about such fears with hormone replacement are diminishing a bit with more information and interpretation of the WHI data. And on the other hand, we're moving towards non-hormonal options for contraception. Is this a demographic difference where the young population in the reproductive age are anti-hormone and the menopausal population is now becoming more pro?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way we look at it is, again, you know, the best healthcare option for someone is the one that she is going to utilize, right? And that is going to fit her lifestyle and have the effectiveness as well. And yes, what we see in the contraceptive space is there is a, you know, sort of loud movement towards, you know, can I get what I want, but without hormones, right?
Which is, at least from the reports, being driven primarily by influencers as opposed to medical professionals.
That's right. That's exactly right. Right. But in the end, right, it's about delivering the products that work and that, you know, and that are going to meet the needs. Right. And for menopause, again, we see, you know, a couple needs in the menopause space, right? So one is, and you've beautifully highlighted the fact that the pendulum has appropriately shifted. There were a lot of women who became very fearful of the use of hormones because of that Women's Health Initiative report. Unfortunately, because all of those findings have been kind of debunked, right, over the years, and it really had to do with the form and the dosage, right?
And the participants, for sure. I mean, they were much older than they should have been, sure.
Exactly, right? But when we look at hormone therapy today, so the pendulum has shifted. However, you know, Menopause Society is very clear that ideally it's non-oral, right? You're delivering the hormones non-oral with both hormones together. And unfortunately, for women to get that today, there is a very disappointing amount of use of compounded products, which are not regulated. They're not controlled. Women don't understand that. Not their business, right, to understand it. Healthcare providers are doing the best they can, right? Compounding is something they can do. They can try to offer someone something that, you know, isn't available. So that is the why there. We felt very strongly that we want to deliver a product that will go through the FDA approval process, be high, right? Very scrutinized and controlled, and that actually meets the guidelines of the Menopause Society. But even there, we recognize that some women aren't going to be able to take hormones. There are others developing non-hormonal treatment for hot flashes, so we don't feel like we need to go there, right? Others are doing it, good. But we also, there's vaginal symptoms, right, of menopause, whether it's because of her age or whether it's because of breast cancer treatments that she's on that makes her go into a menopause-like condition. And so there there's not work on non-hormonal options, right, for sexual pain. So that's, you know, where we focus there. So hopefully that gives you a sense, like, we're about what is the right treatment for the condition, right? We're not pro or against hormones. It's sort of, right, how do we solve these problems and what's the best solution?
So you're dealing with so many areas, as Alyssa pointed out, complex issues, the FDA, somehow you make it look easy, like without breaking a sweat. And yeah, I know all the news that you could share would be public, but what can people anticipate? What is the next big category, the next big milestone that you're excited about? And then I would ask you to close with, what is your secret for being able at least to communicate what seems to be a real sense of calm amid an amazing amount of complexity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all those statements. So right now, what we're very excited about is we do have our hormone-free, right, monthly intravaginal contraceptive candidate in phase 3. It's the single phase 3 to support registration, and that is ongoing right now. It started right at the end of last year.
And so
It's a
for people who
12-month
are
study.
not familiar with that process, give a sense of timing of when that might be available, when it might be approved and available.
Yeah, so the way that works is we're conducting the study that then we'll have to submit to the FDA. The study itself is 12 months and it started the end of last year. So, don't be expecting final data this year, obviously. But as soon as we have that final data, then we'll submit it very quickly to the FDA. And then their review time is 10 to 12 months, right? So, it's not right around the corner, but close, right? And then sildenafil cream, which is our cream formulation of the same active that's in Viagra for women with arousal disorder. We finished a phase 2 study, which was the first time the product had been used at home, in a home environment with women, demonstrated the patient population where it works really well and the endpoints, and have met with the FDA about starting phase 3. We had a meeting with them end of last year. So we're very much looking forward to getting final feedback from them so that we can start the phase 3 studies for that product. So obviously we're very excited about that because it's one of our most advanced products. And then to your point, there's a lot behind it, right? So we're always just trying to move everything forward. And the way we stay kind of focused and calm about that is it is really by being very disciplined on, we are product developers, we do a lot of looking in, right? What's the next step? How do we solve this problem? And there's always product development in the pharmaceutical industry is not a straight line. Right. There are always things you have to consider. You're doing research in humans.
Yeah. Well,
So,
speaking of, I'm going to just add on my wish list for you to
yes,
add to your
please do.
never-ending
Yes.
laundry list. If you could get some testosterone in that ring, boy, would you have a list of very, very happy providers and patients alike. So another task for you.
That is something of great interest to our company. We are very much scientific believers in the value of delivering testosterone to women. And, it's definitely on our list of how do we put a program together to get through the FDA on that. Because we are definitely, all the science is there, right? The science is there. It's important.
Well, thank you so much on behalf of womankind, if I'm able to speak for all of us, and the medical community. I'll just throw everybody in there for the work you're doing, the focus that you have, the way that you articulate what the vision is, and the real problems you're solving. So thank you so much. And we'd love to have you back on when the phase 3 product is approved and continue to hear about all the inroads you're making in women's health. So thanks so much.
Great. Thank you.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast at businessofthev.com for the latest trends and trendsetters in women's health and business.